Everybody hear me okay? Okay. How's everybody doing? Sorry about the kerfluffle. So how many people have heard of PWAs? Does anybody know what the acronym stands for? Who? Okay, two people. Out of those two people, how many people know what those words even mean? One, two, three, kinda? Okay. That's pretty good. So the whole point of this talk is to demystify PWAs, kind of explain what they are, what they're good for, and just kind of give everybody like a ground level understanding of PWAs. So my name's Lee Warrick. I'm a full stack JavaScript developer. I work with React, Vue, Node, Docker, AWS, and some other stuff. Some other things that I do, I run the Project Codex Meetup at which you can find at meetup.com at that address. Also the Tech Junior podcast. We work really, really hard through those two things to kind of make explaining things and the beginner part of learning everything kind of easier for everybody. The hardest part of getting into a new technology is kind of just understanding the landscape of it and kind of getting that ground level understanding. And I feel like that doesn't change no matter how long you're doing development. So if that resonates with you, please check out this stuff or come ask me afterwards and we can talk about it. So that being said, what the heck is a PWA? You say progressive web app, but what do those words even mean? So there's a lot of confusion surrounding progressive web apps. If you go on Google's website and you look up progressive web apps, you'll see some marketing and it says they're fast, reliable, engaging. You know, great. What does that mean? If you check out this quote from the good folks at Ionic, they say that a PWA is a web app that uses modern web capabilities to deliver an app-like experience to users. So maybe that's a little bit closer to what we're talking about, but even that doesn't really say anything, right? So if you look up the minimum requirements from Google, you'll get a list kind of like this. So it has to be served over HTTPS, has to look good and work on a mobile device or a tablet or a desktop. It should have a manifest file. It should load under 10 seconds on a 3G phone. Should work between browsers. Page transitions shouldn't block the network. Does anybody know what that means? Nobody? So if you're building your front end with like React or something, whenever you click a link, it doesn't load a new page. It just gives you a new view. Okay, so you don't see that blank white screen for a second. And then each page of the app should have its own unique URL so it's searchable. So this is a quote from me. PWAs are just SPAs, best practices, and a little bit of extra code. So I kind of borrowed this circle chart from a really great talk that I saw on PWAs. Does everybody know what an SPA is, or single page application? Show of hands. Front-end developers out there? Okay. So this is things that you would build with like React, Vue, Ember.js, Angular. So all of those things, a lot of the stuff that you're probably already working with if you are working as a front-end developer somewhere at a company, to get your website or your app to a PWA is not really that much more than what you're already doing if you're working with those frameworks. So if you pull out the stuff that we talked about from that list, you know, what you really need on top of that is just a manifest, JSON file. You need to support install events. And then you may need to mess with a service worker. So service workers are super scary, but we'll get into that. So how do we actually build one, right? Talked about installation events, manifest, service workers. So installation events, they're still being worked on in the W3C spec. Does everybody know or familiar with W3? Somebody tell me what it is. Yeah, it's the people that kind of decide the standards for the modern web, right? And so they're still hashing it out, you know, what installation events should look like or how they should behave. Currently, Chrome and Google, they're very focused on the end user. So Chrome browser actually has install events in it if you're using the latest one. Not many other browsers have that, if any. So there's not really a whole lot that we can do at this point for that. As far as a manifest, it's just a JSON file. So if anybody's worked with JSON before, piece of cake. Also still a W3 draft. Browser compatibility is spotty at best. So you may have to add some more meta tags into your head tag to kind of overlap with the manifest file. And then service workers. How many people have tried or even messed with a service worker before? A couple of people. Was it fun? No. So service workers are really tough, but we'll get into that. So first thing we can talk about is the install event. So Chrome will fire off a custom event. So just like a event listener you would use for like a click event or a scroll event or something like that. And then you can set up a listener and kind of catch that event. And then it's just a matter of, through your UI, when the user clicks install or some button or whatever that you want to have, you can then fire off that prompt event and it will go through the process of adding the app to the user's home screen. Chrome is really the only browser, like I said, that supports this. So you can still have a PWA, you can still have it install on your other devices. It's just if you're using like Firefox for Android, Opera, all those things, you're gonna have to go into the menu and then click Add to Home Screen. But as things go on and these drafts get worked out, we'll probably see more standardized install events between the browsers. Also, I've got links in my slides, and I'll share this with Jacques and Brian, and you guys can click on this stuff if you're curious, want to learn more. So the manifest file. Usually this is either manifest.json or webmanifest.manifest. Don't name it that, that's really confusing sounding. Like I said, it's just JSON. So for one of the apps that I built, I've got the example on the screen for you. So it's basically kind of like a package JSON for your front-end application for the browser. So it tells you, what the app is named, what kind of icons you have, what the theme colors are for it. And the browser uses this information whenever the user installs your application. So it'll theme like the address bar and stuff. And it will also show you like a custom splash screen for your app whenever the user installs it. And those colors will match up with what you put here. What about service workers? So Dave Geddes, who is the guy that made Flexbox Zombies, if anybody's familiar, he's got a great web-based game that you can play to learn about service workers. And he describes them as a powerful but tricky little script. And then if you go to Google and you read their definition, they say it's a JavaScript file that runs separately from the main browser thread, caching, retrieves resources. They say caching again. So, what does it actually do? It's a script that runs in the background that is going to help you return assets to the users whenever the network connection is spotty or they're requesting something over and over again. So it'll make your app a little bit faster and maybe save your bacon if the network drops out. While researching this, I found this really awesome tweet about service workers. So this guy just totally burns it down and says, to heck with them, I hate them. I tried to love them, but they're terrible. I had to look up what a Vogon was. That's a joke from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One person has read that book aside from me in the audience, so kudos, Joe. So my thing is, I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not going to dive into service worker code straight off the bat. Luckily, all of the big frameworks have created a solution for this already. So if you're working with Create React App, Angular CLI, or the Vue CLI, there's already a plugin for it. WordPress even has a plugin, if you can believe it. Gatsby, VuePress, Angular Universal, all your static site generators, they all have a plugin that you can just kind of drop in, and it will enable a service worker for you. You can also go on MDN, so Mozilla Developers Network, and they have a bunch of examples for different types of service workers that will do different things if you're wanting to go deeper. They call it a cookbook, but it's like a bunch of different examples. And then there's also Workbox, which is Google's solution. It's an NPM package that you can include, which will set up a service worker for you. And then if you want to roll your own, I put up some links to the W3 draft and the Google Docs. Dive deep, good luck. They're pretty tough. So I've made a couple of PWAs at this point, like 3 or 4. just to try it. I'm going to talk about 2 that I made with Create React App and Gatsby. Is anybody fans out there? Netflix guy, thank you. So this is a to-do app that I made. At the bottom, I've got my Lighthouse scores. So if you're not familiar with Lighthouse, you open up Chrome DevTools, you can click on the Audits tab and run your website through like Google's built-in Chrome kind of like performance checker. So it'll tell you what's your performance like, are you accessible, are you following best practices, do you have the proper SEO, all that good stuff. So right out of the box, without touching any of that stuff, using Create React App and a material library, I got almost 100s across the board. All I had to do to actually make this React app a PWA is add the manifest file, add a couple of meta tags to the index HTML, and then change this one line because they already include the service worker JavaScript file for you from unregister to register. And bam, it's ready to go. So we'll take a brief look at this. So this is my personal to-do list. Don't laugh at me. And we're just going to check out some of the dev tools. So here's the audits tab, and you can run that to kind of check out your website's performance and best practices and all that good stuff. But what I want to talk about is the network tab. So service workers are supposed to help with caching and kind of returning resources and all that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to click offline, and then we're going to navigate around the site. So notice that when I clicked about, the screen didn't go white. We didn't try and load an HTML file. We didn't load any JavaScript. Everything's already there. So this is pretty standard SPA behavior. You can see Firebase in the background is trying to send off network requests because that's the back end to this. So we can go back and all that data is still there. We can mark something as complete. Notice that the app is still interactive, still works 100% offline. If we go back and restore the network, you can see these network requests at the bottom will actually fire off and complete. This isn't something that's built into service workers by default. You can probably emulate this behavior with a lot of work, but this is mostly due to Firebase. So they've got RxJS under the hood and a lot of like observables that are re-attempting to send off that request. But hey, I'm a dummy, I just installed the Firebase library and I get all this awesome behavior. So. Yeah, I've never met anybody that uses Firebase in production for like a, their company's app or anything. But as like a personal project. But if you use like external APIs, so service worker is not going to like create a new network connection for you. It's not going to cache every API that you're going to hit, and we'll get to another app like that. So here's another app that I made, this one with Gatsby. So this is my own translation app. It's another Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy joke for you. So all I had to do to make this Gatsby app from the starter, a PWA, was add these 2 plugins, which was like enabling 2 lines in the config, point to the app icon, like where it is in the directory from the manifest, and that's it, ready to go. So this one does not work on Firebase. This works on an API that I borrowed from Google. Please don't tell them. It's actually stolen from the Google Translate plugin, browser extension, I mean. Not stolen. Borrowed, yeah. Please don't cease and desist me, Google. Okay. So there we go. I don't know if this will play. I guess not. I don't know how the audio is set up for this, but normally clicking that button using browser APIs will play that audio back for you. But moral of the story, let's go and turn the network off again. So if we send this request off, notice we'll just get a red failed, there's no magic happening, the service worker didn't do anything. What it's really good for is for serving like pictures, scripts, static assets. It's not going to emulate, an API that you're trying to hit for your app. So they're going to get better as time goes on, but it's not, a perfect solution at this point. So let's talk about the benefits and kind of some statistics that people have dug up about PWAs, or for the business people in the audience. How do I convince my boss to let me do a PWA? So if you go ahead and make a progressive web app, what do you actually get? So remember, we're talking about an SPA, like React, Vue, Angular, all that stuff. Those couple of extra things that you have to hit: serve over HTTPS, which you're probably doing anyway, add a manifest, catch an install event, have an icon, have a service worker. So you get that app-like experience without actually writing a native app. It'll be discoverable on search engines. So a native app you can't find it on Google, right? You got to go into the Play Store or the App Store and actually find it, install it, all that. You may get some repeat traffic through people installing your PWA to their home screen, which you might not have gotten if you buried everything in a native app. And you may get a little bit of offline usability if you do that extra work. What you're not going to get is a native app. You're not going to get into the iOS App Store, but you can get into the Play Store because Google loves PWAs. You won't get access to native mobile APIs, so like the fingerprint scanner or like the phone, that sort of thing. You're still going to need to use native code for that or write a bridge or something. And you're not going to be able to do anything beyond what JavaScript can do, but come on, that's a lot at this point. So, yes, actually, thank you. Hold on, Tinder? Oh, okay. Tell me more about Tinder, Jock. So, if you're trying to convince your boss, like, hey, we should do a PWA, we should take the time, here's some stats from pwastats.com. So Pinterest built a PWA. They increased engagements by 60%, saw a 44% increase in ad revenue, and time on the site increased by 40%. Twitter Lite saw a 20% reduction in bounce rate. Does anybody know what bounce rate is? You want to tell them?
How quickly somebody leaves the page from that one.
Yeah, exactly. So people were less likely to leave the page, which is super important for your company and your job and your livelihood. So if you're this person that's like, nah, we'll just do a native app. I got some interesting statistics for you. Most smartphone users download 0 apps a month. So none. They don't download any. They don't want your native app. 80% of apps that are uninstalled within 1 week of being installed. So they download it, and they're like, I hate this, and get rid of it. 25% of those after a single use, which is pretty terrible. But despite those numbers, there's a 20% increase in mobile sales and revenue. So people are spending more time on phones, they're just not interacting with that device through a native app. Here's some more stats for you. There's a really good infographic from App Institute. Jumia is an African e-commerce site. They saw a 12-time increase in mobile users and a 50% reduction in bounce rate. So imagine Africa, probably spotty network connections, slower speeds, not the best devices that they're on. These things really helped with their business sense. This other one's very interesting. A PWA loads 15 times faster than a native app. So 40 seconds to load and open a native app versus like 5 for a PWA. So people can get onto your site faster and be interacting and engaging with your content. So when does a PWA actually make sense over a regular SPA or just their website? So you want app-like behavior, but you don't need any native APIs. You may want to have your users on your site or your app repeatedly. So they're going to be interacting with it over and over again. It's really easy to do that through an icon on the home screen versus digging in their bookmarks on their mobile device. And maybe you'd like to try and cover some offline capabilities. So some good examples that I came up with for this would be like if you're traveling around New York or something, if there was a subway map native app, it would take a while to download it. It takes a while to fire it up. You just want to click an icon and look at the map. Oh man, which line do I jump on? Another good example could be like a movie times app. So you're not getting a whole lot of functionality. You don't need fingerprint scanner or any of that stuff. It's basically a website. You just want to be able to tap it, look up the times for reference, and be done with it. So it's really good user experience. Or the third one, anytime that you said, really, I have to install an app for this? Come on. So if you're ever saying that or asking yourself that question, maybe think, hey, would this maybe be better as just a website or a PWA? So some final thoughts for me. PWAs are becoming more and more popular. I think the use case is really growing for them. So it's less of an if and more of a when. So maybe keep your eyes peeled for more PWA stuff coming your way. Browser support, as always, is going to get better and better. And from what I've read, there's not many downsides to implementing a PWA. You may spend a little bit of development time, but it's not like adding a service worker or anything is going to tank your site or cause a bunch of errors or anything like that. The only thing that I read was at some point there was like an IE version that had a problem with service workers. But who hasn't had problems with IE? Any hands? No? Okay. So PWAs are an incredible opportunity to make user experiences better today. Thank you. I'll open it up for questions. If you want to get a hold of me or talk to me, you can find me at my website or my email address. Check out my podcast, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.